I'm going to be going over the fate line and uh, and its propensities. So slow but sure, that's what I'm going to go over. And I've dealt with a bunch of hands that didn't have a fate line. And it doesn't mean that the person doesn't have a life or a fate, but the people tend to be drifters. They kind of went from one thing to another. They moved frequently. They didn't stay at a job very long. They were kind of creatures of fate, and I found that they had no rhyme or reason, so they were consistently inconsistent. Someone would say, well, do you read the left hand or the right hand? The old gypsies used to tell somebody it was the left hand because it was closest to the heart. And to the average person, that sounded fine. But actually, the future is in your dominant hand, and the past is in your passive hand. So, but they both, in some ways, could be found in both hands. Another thing is when you compare the two hands, if there's a big difference, the person changed their own tendencies that they were born with. If they look identical, the person just went through life with the attributes they had, and they just followed the path that they were born with. But I'm going to go into some very interesting things about the fate line. When I did a palmistry class, I always gave each person, I bought a bunch of magnifying glasses so that they can really look at like a photocopy of the hand. And the most interesting thing is that all of a sudden, somebody could be 50 years old. All of a sudden now they notice their hand for the first time, and now they're looking at it like they never saw their own hand before. Now, the way somebody should really learn to read hands is through photocopies. When you do a line drawing of a hand, with magic marker, the lines in a hand and on a photocopy, it will just show to you the lines and the formation of the hand. And it's like an x-ray that an x-ray doctor, a radiologist would have to look at. And they got to get used to looking at the x-ray or the handprint, because the lines on the hand are not going to look like the magic marker. So I just wanted to bring out that point. But what I'm going to do at this point is go to some diagrams. Now, this is a diagram of a fate line. You see the lifeline here, and you see the headline, and the fate line goes straight up towards Saturn. And that's usually called the Saturnian fate line. It goes right to the middle finger, and it means that the person has a course in life. They're traveling a certain specific course. Now, when the fate line comes from the lifeline, like this, right there, the person makes it their own way. It's tough from the beginning, and they have to break away from family circumstances. There's another situation where the fate line starts around the lifeline. Like this is the lifeline, and the headline's up here. And the fate line actually starts from around the lifeline and goes up. And that means the person was tied down from family situations. Now, the normal start for the lifeline, like I said, is almost like a Saturn line, straight up to the middle finger, more or less. And if the fate line goes to the index finger, that's a Jupiterian fate line. And when it goes to the middle finger, it's a Saturnian fate line, which is a normal type of beginning. Now, that means that somebody born on the 8th, 17th, 26th day of any month, or a January, or a Capricorn, or a February Aquarius, would tend to affect their life. Now, if it's Jupiter, it would be somebody either December or Sagittarius, a March or a Pisces, or somebody born on the 3rd, 12th, 21st, or 30th of any month would affect their life. Now, when a line joins the fate line, like this little line here, it's what we call an influence line to the fate line. Now I'm going to go to the second sheet. I drew some more. I wanted to show that if the influence line has an island on it, the person who influences the life or the fate is of questionable circumstances, and they may be a person with a past, so to speak. If the fate line starts from the heart line, which is the second line up, here's the lifeline, the headline, as you know, and the heart line, they really gain momentum late in life, and usually through family or a new tie or a new emotional situation. When the fate line starts from the mount of the moon or Luna, it's called the fate line, which has to do with the caprice of other people. That means that the person's circumstances depends on how people think of them or feel about them or what they do, like a singer, a comedian, a car salesman. Anybody that has to satisfy other people is the caprice of other people. I mean, somebody might say they have to satisfy the boss, but it's more of a public thing, like being a salesman. Your customers have to like you to sell a car. Or if you're a singer, they have to like the way you sing. Or if you're a painter, they have to like your paintings. If they don't like your paintings, you don't have a living. Now, if a fate line comes from mid-Mars, which is between the headline and the heart line, that's called mid-Mars. It's called the quadrangle, the distance between those two lines. The person makes it later in life, but it's tough from their own circumstances. And if it comes from the headline, like I'm showing here, it means that they made it from their own intelligence, some skill or intelligence. But it's interesting to look at the different varieties, and sometimes in certain circumstances, you'll see a fate line start and stop. And another circumstance is what we call a companion line. Sometimes somebody, an important person, parallels the person's life, like this green line, and that's called a companion line to the fate line. And that should be noted. That's called the companion line. And you'll find that it will be an extra line that actually parallels the fate line. But remember, these lines are not thick like this. You got to get used to looking at a very thin line on a female's hand who's not a heavy person and is young, and they have delicate lines, and you use a magnifying glass, and you get used to looking at photocopies and looking at the hand directly, and it's not going to be like the magic marker. You got to learn to get used to it. And how do you do that? Experience and start reading hands. You can read 1,000,000 books, but you're going to have to actually take a photocopy. You're going to actually have to look at real hands and picture that you're a doctor with an X-ray. And this is what you have to do. And you'll learn to read the X-ray, which is the handprint, and you'll be able to ascertain the different lines, and that's the way to go.